We are almost through with the beginning chapters, but we've got one last thing to cover, so you'll have all the tools you need to help you make a memorable design, which is research. So, let's get started. This video is going to cover sort of my theory to approaching research. I know research might not sound like the most glamorous thing, especially if you're not someone who's really into world building. But it can serve a lot of purposes, all of which can be crucial to both your development as an artist as well as the design process for the character itself. As a preface, I'll be approaching all of our talks about design from the perspective of a concept artist for video games. But while the specific problems and limitations may be different, all fields require you to consider what the parameters of your sandbox are. Whether that be for video games, animation, film, illustration, comics, or even just for a standalone character in your portfolio, knowing what the project is for will help you set a course for the character as a whole. So, I encourage you to find the right framing for the project you have in mind for this class. Whenever I walk into a character design project, there are times when I have no idea what I want to do, and times when I already have a concept I want to run with. In both of these situations, research is fantastic, because it can either give me options and lead me into an inspirational rabbit hole, or it can help me flesh out and expand the concept I already had in my head. As creatives, our tastes and output are determined by the content we consume and have consumed in our lifetime. When it comes to character design, our first instinct is often a distilled version of that life experience. For some, it's enough to just rely on those inspirations that we already have in our head, and at any given point in our life, we could probably come up with something if we're given a random prompt. But when it comes to character design at a higher level, we should always assume the stance that there are possibilities we haven't considered yet, and by not exploring those ideas at the right time, we risk limiting the quality and potential of the end result. It's also imperative that we're constantly expanding and adding to that visual library so that the work we do are not merely derivatives of the work we've already seen. So, how do we do that? There are two types of research you can do in these situations, which is exploratory and expansive. Exploratory research is what I tend to do at the start of a project if I have no pre-existing concept. I'll use a reference bank that I've built like my Pinterest, or scroll through art that I've either saved or bookmarked to see if there's something there that can spark some ideas. I'll then write down some of those thoughts and start doing more pointed research to expand those concepts, especially if they're pretty vague. This method is essentially like a brain map where I'm hopping between research and writing to expand my options. I like using Pinterest because it also gives you results that are loosely related under each pin, making it easy to get into searches that you probably would have never found on the front page of Google. That being said, there's a lot of misinformation and stolen work on Pinterest, so always use a good old Google search when dealing with actual historical and cultural media, or even just to find the source of someone's work. Using reverse image search engines and images.google.com can help pin a collection of images if you think there's a visual lead worth chasing. I always find this type of research fun to do in my free time, as the information and inspiration I add to my visual library outside of work will help me streamline my process when I'm ideating for actual prompts. Next is expansive research. This method is for when you have a concept but the details are vague or underdeveloped. My biggest recommendation when doing research is to start with something that you're familiar with, like a knight in shining armor, and then start looking in places that are on the opposite side of the spectrum, like insects, architecture, and inanimate objects. The farther you get from classic reference images, the better. Avoid using pre-existing concept pieces done by other artists, and start with just the media you can source to real life. This means photos of extant garments, studying real species of flora and fauna, and getting into the cultural practices of places you've probably never heard of. Take the concept you have in your head and twist it. Set in a different time period, throw in a visual reference that's often never associated with your core concept, try out some shape language inspired by random objects to give your concept a unique flair. The more ways you find to incorporate different kinds of research, the more directions your concept has to grow, and the practice of generating ideas based on research will help you once you get into the ideation and iteration phase of the design process. This process as a whole feels more like a visual train of thought, allowing the idea to grow and percolate in your mind as you push the idea further. With those two directions in mind, I want you to consider how you'd like to approach your project for this class. Think about several ideas which seem interesting to you and write down keywords that really describe the concepts you'd like to explore. As we wrap up, it's important to remember that we're not tied to the research we've done. More often than not, your final design will share slight resemblance to the actual concrete images you used at the start of the project, but has since evolved as your understanding of the concept evolved. What matters most when it comes to research and development is not that you're answering all of your design problems at once, but rather capturing the essence of the concept for both you and the team or client. Use the time you spend during this blue sky phase to really expand the limits of your sandbox before you get attached to any one look or direction. So frankly, I've been talking pretty abstractly in this chapter, but fear not, in the next video we'll be covering some actual tips on how to compile and organize your research. So I'll see you there!